The UFC didn't evolve because fighters got better. It evolved because old systems stopped working. Every dominant champion, every unbeatable style, every meta that looked permanent, all of them collapsed. Every era of this sport can be defined by one question: what actually wins fights right now? And every time the answer changes, champions disappear overnight. Royce Gracie revolutionized fighting, then became irrelevant. Chuck Liddell knocked everyone out, then got knocked out. Anderson Silva looked invincible, then got knocked out twice in a row. This is the story of 8 eras, 8 different answers to what wins, and why none of them lasted forever. November 12, 1993, McNichols Sports Arena, Denver, Colorado. An 8-man tournament with almost no rules, no weight classes, no rounds, no time limits. The only illegal moves were biting and eye gouging. Just one question: which martial art is superior? The answer shocked the martial arts world. A 70-pound Brazilian in a white gi named Royce Gracie submitted 3 opponents in one night to win $50,000 and change fighting forever. He didn't outfight anyone. He removed their option. Art Jimerson was a professional boxer with an 18-1 record who wore one boxing glove into the octagon. Royce took him down and mounted him. Jimerson tapped without taking a single punch. Gerard Gordeau was a savage Dutch kickboxer who had knocked out a sumo wrestler twice his size. Royce choked him unconscious in 1 minute 44 seconds. Ken Shamrock, the dangerous submission wrestler, tapped to a rear naked choke in 4 minutes. What won fights in this era was positional grappling dominance. Size didn't matter. Strength didn't matter. If you couldn't defend a takedown and didn't know how to escape mount, you lost. Control over chaos was unbeatable. Royce proved that technique could neutralize every physical advantage. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu looked like magic because nobody had ever seen it before. But that advantage had an expiration date. The secret spread, gyms opened, fighters cross-trained. Within 5 years, basic grappling defense became standard. When everyone learned to survive, survival stopped winning fights. The sport almost died. Senator John McCain called it human cockfighting. 36 states banned it. Cable companies dropped it from pay-per-view. Then in 2001, everything changed. The Fertitta brothers bought the UFC for $2 million and installed Dana White as president. More importantly, New Jersey created the unified rules of mixed martial arts. Weight classes were introduced, rounds were standardized, fouls were defined. The sport gained structure, and with structure came legitimacy. What won fights in this era was toughness, pressure, and brawling. This wasn't just Chuck Liddell. It was an era where basic wrestling defense plus power striking overwhelmed specialists. Chuck became the face of the UFC by walking forward and throwing bombs. His sprawl and brawl style worked because technical depth was low. Randy Couture used dirty boxing in the clinch. Tito Ortiz used ground and pound from top position. Fighters had basic wrestling defense and decent striking, but layered game plans didn't exist yet. Liddell's overhand right knocked out Tito Ortiz, Randy Couture, and anyone else who stood in front of him. He became light heavyweight champion and held it for 2 years. The problem was simple. Toughness without defense became exploitable. Pressure without angles became predictable. When the sport added rules, toughness alone became a losing strategy. April 9, 2005, The Ultimate Fighter finale aired live on Spike TV. The UFC was on life support. Pay-per-view buys were dying. The Fertitta brothers had lost tens of millions of dollars. This reality show was a last-ditch effort. Forrest Griffin fought Stephan Bonnar in a 3-round war that became the most important fight in UFC history. It wasn't the most technical fight. Neither fighter had elite striking defense. It wasn't the most skilled fight. Both men got hit clean, over and over. It was the most emotional fight the sport had ever seen. Both men threw everything they had for 15 minutes straight. Blood everywhere. No quit in either of them. Griffin won by decision, but Dana White gave both fighters 6-figure contracts on the spot. The next day, Spike TV ordered more seasons. Within a year, pay-per-view buys tripled. The UFC went from dying to thriving because 2 fighters showed the world what heart looked like. What won fights in this era was cardio, grit, and basic fundamentals. Volume mattered more than precision. Durability mattered more than defense. But pushing that pace meant energy inefficiency. Fighters who could sustain 3 rounds of brawling beat fighters with better technique, but worse conditioning. The Ultimate Fighter created a blueprint: show your heart, push the pace, never quit. It worked because the sport was still young, but physics is undefeated. When everyone had cardio, cardio stopped being a weapon. 2 champions ruled simultaneously and redefined what dominance looked like. Georges St-Pierre controlled the welterweight division with perfect distance management and wrestling. Anderson Silva controlled the middleweight division with with counter-striking, so precise it looked supernatural. Both champions had the same philosophy. Winning meant denying exchanges, not chasing finishes. GSP took opponents down, controlled position, and won rounds. Silva stayed on the outside, avoided damage, and picked perfect moments to counter. What won fights in this era was distance control, timing, and risk minimization. Champions controlled minutes, not moments. They made fights boring on purpose because boring meant safe. GSP defended his title 9 times. Silva defended his title 10 times. Both lost fewer than 10 significant strikes per round. The problem was predictability. When fights became chess matches, pressure learned how to flip the board. Johnny Hendricks pressured GSP so hard that many thought he won. Chris Weidman pressured Silva into a knockout. When control became the meta, aggression found the counter. Conor McGregor changed everything. He didn't just win fights, he sold them, and he did both in ways nobody had seen before. December 12, 2015, UFC 19-4 in Las Vegas. McGregor knocked out Jose Aldo, the greatest featherweight of all time, in 13 seconds to become champion. Aldo had been undefeated for 10 years. McGregor studied his patterns, baited the attack, and landed a perfect counter left hand. One shot. Fight over. Then he moved to lightweight and destroyed Eddie Alvarez with precision, striking across 4 rounds to become the first simultaneous 2-division champion in UFC history. His fights with Nate Diaz did over 1.5 million pay-per-view buys. His rematch with Khabib did over 2 million. But the real revolution wasn't the money or the titles. It was how he fought. Precision over volume, timing over pressure, distance management over brawling, psychological warfare before the bell even rang. He made opponents fight emotionally before the cage door closed, and emotional fighters make mistakes. What won fights in this era was precision, timing, and psychological momentum. McGregor proved that one perfect shot beats 100 good ones. Confidence became a weapon. Fighters started selling fights like McGregor, but more importantly, they started fighting like him. The left hand became the money shot. Counter-striking became fashionable. There was one fatal flaw: precision requires space, and pressure learned how to take it away. Khabib Nurmagomedov smothered McGregor's timing by never giving him room to set his feet. Nate Diaz pressured him into a submission. When timing needed space, pressure learned how to remove it. Specialists disappeared. To be champion, you had to be complete. Khabib Nurmagomedov retired undefeated at 29-0 with a grappling system that nobody could solve. Amanda Nunes became a 2-division champion by knocking out every legend the sport had. Israel Adesanya became middleweight champion with striking so clean it looked like kickboxing. But all three had something in common: no exploitable gaps. You couldn't just take Khabib down. You couldn't just outstrike Nunes. You couldn't just wrestle Adesanya. What won fights in this era was well-rounded skill with no weaknesses. Every champion had to strike, wrestle, and defend everywhere. One-dimensional fighters hit a ceiling. Being good everywhere became the minimum requirement, not the ceiling. This was a transitional era. Having no weaknesses meant you couldn't be exploited easily, but it didn't make you dominant. Being good everywhere isn't the same as being great anywhere. Optimized pressure systems began separating elites from contenders. When everyone had no weaknesses, systems became the difference. Champion versus champion became normal. Conor versus Khabib sold massively, but divisions stalled underneath. Amanda Nunes held 2 belts and fought whenever she wanted. Kamaru Usman defended the welterweight title 5 times but rarely fought more than twice a year. The sport became about business, not competition. What won fights in this era was brand leverage and matchup control. Champions picked opponents based on pay-per-view buys. Divisions slowed down while champions chased money fights. The problem was the pipeline. Talent outpaced matchmaking. Hungry contenders built system-driven pressure styles while waiting for their shot. When belts became business tools, the sport corrected itself. Islam Makhachev is the most decorated lightweight champion in UFC history. 5 title fight wins, 4 successful title defenses, 14 straight victories in the lightweight division. In November 2025, he moved to welterweight and defeated Jack Della Maddalena by unanimous decision to win a 2nd belt, becoming the 11th double champion in UFC history, and tying Anderson Silva's record of 16 consecutive UFC wins. His system is Dagestani wrestling refined to perfection. Remove space, remove time, remove options. He doesn't chase finishes in the first round. He wears you down with body locks and trips. He advances position slowly. He forces errors systematically. His submission of Dustin Poirier at UFC 3 Sioux was pure inevitability. 5 rounds of pressure until the choke presented itself. Alex Pereira won the middleweight title by knocking out Israel Adesanya in the 5th round at UFC 28-1, then moved to light heavyweight and became champion in just 7 fights in 736 days, the fastest 2-division champion champion in UFC history. He defended the light heavyweight title 3 times in 175 days, breaking the record for fastest 3 defenses. His system is pressure striking from his glory kickboxing days. He doesn't set up one perfect shot. He forces opponents into bad positions with feints, cuts angles, and lands when they're thinking instead of reacting. Leon Edwards became welterweight champion with a head kick knockout of Kamaru Usman that nobody saw coming. His system is defensive brilliance that turns into offense the moment you overcommit. He makes you fight at his pace, in his range, on his turn. What wins fights in this era is pressure systems and decision collapse. Fighters don't chase knockouts. They attack processing, not toughness. They remove space so you can't think. They remove time so you can't recover. They remove options so you're forced into bad decisions. This system scales against every style. It punishes aging faster than athletic decline. And it hasn't failed yet because it doesn't rely on physical gifts. It relies on breaking mental architecture. Eras don't end because fighters get worse. They end because systems stop working. The best champions delay collapse longer than others, but none escape it forever. The question isn't who the best fighter is, it's which system wins right now. And right now, pressure is undefeated until someone figures out how to break it. And the moment they do, this era ends too.